What's up, guys? If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Also, please smash that like button on the video and enjoy the show.
What is your opinion on the government agencies controlling the media narrative of like the top media outlets? Like kind of like we talked about last night.
I know it's hard sometimes hanging out with you guys because you spend so much time worrying about government agencies controlling the narrative, government agencies controlling the tools, and people being plants and people being whatever. If you had any idea how limited budgets were at the federal government and how insignificant the public's opinion is to those government agencies, then you would get a sense of why they wouldn't spend any time trying to plant a YouTube plant that gets lots of views and controls a narrative on a channel that's controlled by Google. That doesn't matter. So are secret government agencies in charge? Do they care about the media spin? No. They don't need to care about the media spin.
What do you mean no?
They don't care.
Well,
there's no impact on national security. The cost would be outrageous.
some stories there's probably impact on national security.
Absolutely.
Like Jack Murphy's story.
I disagree on that.
You can disagree all you want. You weren't on the inside. It doesn't matter to us. To stand in the way of the American population's access to information, the blowback is so significant if you get caught, and the cost is so outrageous you'd never be able to justify the results. You've heard him say it already today, right? It's so much easier to just selectively release information and let the media do the predictable thing and run it to ground. That's way more effective. Like the UAP.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
So that's the way that we do it. It's like, oh, we've got 15 secrets. Well, what are we going to do about these 15 secrets? Well, 2 of these aren't really that secret. And if we let them loose, like we'd send a message to the Chinese. Remember the 4 things I was telling you about? You got to think about what's the impact now? What's the impact to your adversary? How are you going to walk it back? That's the way we think. It's so much easier to control that when you just choose to let something out rather than when you try to shape
a limited
and
hangout.
control a narrative.
That's what it is.
What about Jack Murphy's story that I told you about yesterday? I've told this story ad nauseum on the podcast, but he's the ex-Army Ranger guy who did that reporting on the NATO allies that were running covert operations, sabotage operations in Russia. He got a bunch of former CIA people to be his sources on the story, and there was like probably 12 of them, I think, that confirmed the story and all corroborated the story. And then he spent a year writing it and was going to publish it in one of the top 2
New York Times
newspaper publications. I don't know if it was the New York Times or not. He never confirmed which one it was.
Oh, he didn't?
But it was one of the top 2 ones. And they were ready to publish the whole entire story, press the publish button, but the editor at that publication said, we have to make one more call to the deputy director of the CIA to confirm it and get his take on it. He got in a 3-way call with the deputy director who has an off-the-record agreement with that publication, said, this is all false. So instead of just adding a blurb at the end of it saying the CIA denies any of this stuff, the agreement they have with the CIA is if they disagree with it, they say it's false, they cannot publish it. So they kibosh the whole story.
So first of all, you don't know if there's an agreement or not if it's not a written agreement. So somebody told you, somewhere you got the idea that there's an agreement, but you never actually saw an agreement, so that's not vetted information.
Well, that's what the editor said. The editor told him on the phone that they have an agreement with them.
So either way, if they have an agreement, that's the editor's call. That's a business owner's call. And I don't blame him. You know what if I was the chief editor, the editor-in-chief of the New York Times or whatever the hell, Washington Post or whatever it was, the last thing I want to do is publish a story that's then going to blow back and make me look like I'm an ass with evidence that's contrary to what the author just wrote and whatever else.
And look, I understand it's important to keep covert ops off the front pages of the newspaper.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that he had a single source piece of information. He had Jack Murphy saying, this is what happened.
And Jack Murphy bringing those 12 to the table.
That's not the same as independent corroboration. Sorry,
That's exactly right. It might have, listen, it probably happened, right? It probably happened, but there's no pussy-ass editor of the New York Times that's going to sit there and say, oh, let's go. I'm a fucking courageous warrior. Fuck,
bring me one piece of corroborative information.
This is gonna wreck my fucking life.
Professional journalists.
If it blows back.
Truly professional journalists are saying, I need corroborative information. I can't take a single source. A single source that brings me 12 other sources could all be collapsed.
He had multiple, right?
He had over 12 sources.
He brought them
to the table. They weren't independently corroborated.
Correct.
Through their own.
The editor-in-chief didn't go do it. Exactly.
The editor talked to each one of those sources directly.
They were brought by Jack Murphy.
He's the developing guy. He's bringing those.
Right.
What we're
Well,
talking about
right.
is
But in fairness, the
there's
editor's
12
only
Jack
source was the
Murphys.
current deputy director.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So he had one.
Whose job is to keep covert action off the front page of the
So
newspaper.
what would you do if you were the editor-in-chief?
I would do the same thing.
Then it's not.
But do you think that's a good thing?
Let's go back to the original question. Your original question was, how do you feel about secret government agencies controlling the narrative? There was no secret government agency controlling the narrative. It was an editor-in-chief choosing not to publish a story. It was not secret government agency controlling the narrative. You see the difference?
It is it's not in a direct way, but it is in an indirect way.
The government
leverage they
agency
have.
wasn't controlling it at all. The editor could have made his own call. He could have risked his career. He could have risked his paycheck. He could have done anything he wanted to, but he didn't. That's not because CIA said no. The CIA, in fact, according to your own story, what the deputy director said is all of this is false.
Mm-hmm.
If the editor-in-chief had enough evidence that he was like, I actually have tons of evidence that this is true.
Go forward.
Now I'm going to go forward with it anyways
Yeah.
and say that the CIA didn't have no comment. CIA said it was a
It's
lie.
false. Yeah.
And we have all this proof that it wasn't.
That's
So
a
it's an even
better-
better
that's
story.
a
So
story.
here's the other thing here, and I
That's
can't
a
speak
better
on the
story.
specifics of this because I haven't talked to Jack about it or something, but we'll throw this out there. So when I had Joby Warwick on the podcast, who's been the national security reporter at the Washington Post for one of them for a very long time, great guy, great reporter. He was actually very open about the difficulty of some of these conversations that happen in the back room when it involves foreign policy related stuff
Absolutely.
and events. And what he said is that almost that, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but a significant amount of the time, you will have the CIA people or sometimes maybe the NSA or something else say on the phone, if you put to every story, almost every story, if you put this out, American lives are going to be at stake and people are going to die. And he said, we don't know shit. We're just reporting what we can find. So we have to go back in the room because it's not like we can quash all of them. Sometimes we got to publish, right? And we would like to publish all of them if we can get the right burden of proof. But we have to have these impossible conversations that don't get any easier over time, where we got to say, do we believe him or don't we?
Right.
Fuck if I know how I would deal with that conversation.
That's why you're not the journalist.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
That's the journalist's cross to bear.
Yeah.
Truly.
Like if you're going to be an investigative journalist and you're going to be investigating that topic, it's like the police officers that have to investigate domestic homicides or child pornography or anything else. They put themselves in a position where they have to carry the burden of the evidence that they're dealing with. Right? He could be a journalist for fucking recipe books if he wants to be, but he's choosing that. So he has to deal with that decision. He's the one that has to go to bed at night wondering if it's right or whether it's wrong. It's still not the national security body of the United States controlling the public narrative.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. Please hit that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.